Hi everyone, and welcome back to Coachy TV. This is going to be the first of a two-part series on aerobic threshold running. The first part, we're going to look at how this type of workout helps your athlete long-term, the desired training adaptation. And the second part, we'll look at how to create some workouts using this workout intensity. So aerobic threshold there in the parentheses, this is your easy pace run, the staple of a distance runner's diet, but just because it's easy pace doesn't mean it's simple. You need to pay as close attention to this type of workout as you would any higher intensity workout if you're going to get the desired training effect. So just you and your athlete need to know just because it's easy doesn't mean it's simple, and they need to pay attention to the desired workout objective in order to get the desired training adaptation out of it. So as always, my name is Kyle Adjocno. I am the head boys cross country and track coach at Wharton High School in Tampa, Florida, and I have been for the last 6 years. If you want to take a look at my credentials, they are down below. Testing VO2 max, we talked about this in a previous video, and if you want to take a look at that, it's in the description down below. 4 main field tests. We're going to look at the Ashton protocol. And in that protocol, it calls for having your athlete run 2 miles best paced. And let's say that theoretically we had a kid do that in 10:30. They would have a current date pace VVO2 max of 5:15. Their body reaches maximum oxygen use at 5:15. So we're dealing with 315 seconds. Just a quick recap on how to create workouts with that. If you were to have an aerobic threshold target, you want it to be 65 to 70% of their current VVO2 max. So you would divide 315 by 0.65 and then 315 by 0.7 to get the total number of seconds, and that equals 8 minutes and 5 seconds and 7 minutes and 30 seconds. That is the range that you're going to want your kid to run in if they have a date pace of 5:15, and whatever they run in that test, you would just change the numbers around and get their VO2 max. So a 10:30 kid is certainly not a state champion, but they're probably going to do fairly well in most of your local meets. A pretty decent runner at this point. And it may seem that 7:30 to 8:05 is too slow for this kid. But the intensity is going to need to be low in order for the desired training adaptation to happen from this type of workout. So let's take a little look at the energy continuum so we can see how this fits in and why we need it to be at that type of low intensity. So do not freak out at this chart. There's a lot going on here, but we're going to limit our discussion for today on the far right-hand side. This is basically just all the paces that a human could use throughout their entire energy system, from slow aerobic all the way up to super fast type of things you would do in like a Fly 30 type of workout. So VO2 max or 2 mile pace is right in the middle. We're just going to deal with the green side of this all the way over to the right. So what we're looking at here for this video, aerobic threshold, is going to be right here, 65 to 70% in this green zone. And if you look below the chart, this is an intensity that they should be able to hold for up to 2 hours theoretically. Obviously not the first week, but when they're in shape, they should be able to hold this workout for up to 2 hours when they're aerobically in shape. And the reason why we say that aerobic threshold has 65 to 70% or your easy pace workout is in there is because this is the point in which the human body, this intensity, your body can burn both fat and carbohydrates equally. Fat, while it is a great way to store energy, is a very complex molecule, and the human body can't break it down very quickly. So whenever you start going faster than, say, 70%, your body has to use carbohydrates for that energy demand because carbohydrates are fast fuel. And in order to stay in this training zone, we got to keep it lower than 70% for a couple of reasons. One, glycogen or stored glucose. Your body stores glucose as glycogen in your liver and your working muscles. We have a relatively small amount of that store. If a human body is totally well trained and very well fueled up on carbohydrates, you have about 2 or so hours of this kind of fuel source in your body. Not 2 hours at aerobic threshold pace, but 2 hours of fast carbohydrate type of workouts. And what we want to do is, by using 50% fat to carbohydrates in this way, it'll allow us to use this stored glucose or glycogen for faster paced workouts in the microcycle or in your week or however you do your repeating of workouts. So we want to use that glycogen when we need to later on. We don't want to use it on easy pace days. And I'll do a whole workout series on faster type workouts, intervals, VO2 max, aerobic power type workouts, tempo runs, but aerobic threshold is easy, and so we don't want to use our fast fuel for this. And this is what it's going to allow you to do, is to spare that glycogen long term. The low intensity also allows the volume to be much higher in this type of workout. Obviously, your easy pace runs are your continuous runs. You're going to do this for a high amount of volume, and the lower intensity allows the athlete to just do it for longer. Because not only if you go faster than 70% of your VVO2 max, you are going to be burning glycogen much higher, and that will eventually stop the athlete too. But probably before that, most times they're going to have to stop because of, depending on how far across this continuum they go, they might be acid buildup. There's going to be just mental and physical fatigue of going at a faster intensity, and so keeping it low allows you to have a longer workout so that you can get some of the desired training adaptations that we're going to look at a little bit later. Another thing that you can look at, obviously you're going to have good VO2 max targets on them, or easy pace runs from their VO2 max test, but you can also do this by looking at their heart rate. 65 to 70% aerobic threshold is about 120 to 150 beats per minute. So an easy way you can have your kids check themselves as they go through, especially if they don't have a good GPS watch on them, is to count their pulse, put their 2 fingers by the side of their neck, right where their carotid artery is, and if they're between 20 and 25 seconds, or 20 to 25 beats in 10 seconds, then they're in this training zone about. And I would get them used to checking their heart rate during a workout, not during a break, but as they're actually running. Check your heart rate, figure out where it is, and get good at checking it. A lot of GPS watches now come with a heart rate monitor, but a lot of things can go wrong on that. It can just be the sliding on their arms can cause it to be an issue. It's better to just count their heart rate and get used to kind of doing that, and use maybe some of those other methods as sort of just a gauge, but that's a way that they can check themselves in their workout. So the designed adaptation of aerobic threshold run is threefold. First off, in their cardiovascular system, this workout is going to allow them to have increased heart size, decreased resting heart rates, so their heart is going to be working less as they are not working out. Increased stroke volume, meaning more blood is going to be pumped with each heartbeat. Increased cardiac output, which just means they're moving more blood, kind of similar to stroke volume. Increased blood flow, increased blood volume, and improved blood composition, meaning they're going to have more ability to carry oxygen on the blood that they have. All of those things happen to the cardiovascular system with an aerobic threshold type workout. Muscular system wise, their slow twitch aerobic muscle fibers are going to be enhanced. There's still some science that needs to be done on this to see if it's that the muscles are getting bigger or if they're just better at contracting, but we do know that they're enhanced with this type of workout. You're going to have increased capillaries, so not only is in the cardiovascular system your heart is moving more blood, but they're going to have more capillaries in those working muscles to deliver more of that blood. So in the beginning of a training year, they might have maybe 2 capillaries per muscle fiber. Maybe they're going to have 3 or 4 by the end of a training year, and that's going to be that much more oxygen delivered to their working muscle when they need it in a race. They're going to have increased mitochondria, both the size, the number, and the surface area of mitochondria. And mitochondria are really, really interesting. I'm going to do a whole video or maybe a series of videos on them. But basically, if you have more mitochondria, if the mitochondria are bigger and they have more surface area, that is more aerobic energy for your athlete. And the metabolic system is going to be enhanced. This is increased fat storage and use. So we talked about the aerobic threshold run. Their body is going to be using fat as well as carbohydrates. And the first 2 on here, increased fat storage and use as well as increased glycogen storage and use. As you do this type of run for longer and longer, your body is going to store more of this fat and this glycogen, and it's actually going to store it closer to the muscles that are working harder. Your body's really good at adapting to things, and if you're telling it we need this type of fuel in these working muscles, it's going to do a better job of putting it closer to the working muscles so it can then be used better by by your athlete's body. You're also going to have increased aerobic enzymes, volume, and activity, and that is going to help the mitochondria do their work inside the working muscle cell. So, all of these things are based on a very important point. Your body will release a protein-like hormone after 20 minutes of this type of training intensity. Now, aerobic threshold, and that's any aerobic type of run, 20 continuous minutes. Aerobic threshold runs allow you to stay in that zone for longer. So, if you run for 21 minutes, your body has released this protein-like hormone that increases heart size, decreases resting heart rate. All of these things on here, this protein-like hormone is what is, for the most part, at least partially responsible for or entirely responsible for. So an aerobic threshold run, as we said, can be done for longer. The more you do after that 20-minute threshold, the better it's going to be. Now, we'll talk about that 20 minutes and the window and are there any breaks in the next video I'm going to do on this. But essentially, 20 minutes is the key. Anything more than that, and you are getting that training effect that you are looking at. So, that's what I was just saying. The key to it is this low intensity for 20 minutes. Now, if you can do faster for more than 20 minutes, you're going to get that same training effect, but you're not going to be able to do it for nearly as long as an aerobic threshold run, and that's really what you're looking for is these three design training adaptations, and low intensity is the key. Now, I've been saying low intensity in this aerobic threshold, and for me, this was the hardest part for me to accept when I went to the USATF, USA Track and Field Level 2 endurance school. Obviously we want our athletes to be as good as possible, and sometimes we think that faster is better. And just as a really brief recap of after I was able to accept this, I went to the USATF Level 2 school in December of 2017. These are the Wharton boys' time progressions over the last number of years, and the arrows are pointing to after I went to Level 2 and accepted this training and did these more easy pace runs for the 5K, the 2-mile, the mile, and the half-mile. And as you can see, there are huge jumps when I just had them run easy, do these easy pace kinds of runs so that all those design training adaptations that I was just mentioning in the last slide can actually happen, and they can use them better in the race and in some of the harder workouts that you have later on too. So, essentially, when we talk about this, the volume is the intensity on these days. You have to get away from the mindset of intensity has to be high for them to be doing anything. Volume is the intensity on these aerobic threshold days. On easy days, it should be. The first mile should feel easy. It's an easy pace run. But it's not a 1-mile run. It's a longer continuous run. So you have to keep that in mind, that volume is the intensity on these days. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't think that, for example, that kid that we were talking about that ran 10:30 in his VVO2 max test, if 7:30 is the upper end of his range, well, if he runs 7:20, that's a better day. Nope. Keep this volume high and the intensity low. They will be able to run this workout faster. Obviously, it's an easy pace run, but what can you stack after this workout to actually help them long term? So, think of this as saving their glycogen and their overall energy for the faster paced workouts to come throughout your entire microcycle. We'll do some workouts on, or some videos on those workouts later on, but for right now, this is the reason you're doing this aerobic threshold running. Check back in tomorrow, and I will do a whole workout or whole video on just how to create workouts out of this, touch a little bit more on aerobic threshold and what you need for your athlete and why you're doing this type of workout. If you like the video, please think about liking or subscribing. If you have a question, go ahead and comment down below. And until next time, this has been Coachy TV, and I will see you tomorrow when we do the second part of this video series on aerobic threshold runs, when we look at some specific workouts.